Okay, one more creations reading. This one, Lucretius De Rerum Natura, The Nature of Things. This one this first part translated by A.E. Stallings. And I'm going to start in book 1. Life-stirring Venus, mother of Aeneas and of Rome, pleasure of men and gods, you make all things beneath the dome of sliding constellations teem. You throng the fruited earth and the ship-freighted sea, for every species comes to birth conceived through you, and rises forth and gazes on the light. The winds flee from you, goddess. Your arrival puts to flight the clouds of heaven. For you, the crafty earth contrives sweet flowers. For you, the oceans laugh, the skies grow peaceful after showers, awash with light. For soon as morning wears the face of spring, and the west wing is free and freshens, warm and quickening, the airy tribe of birds, O Holy One, is first to start heralding your approach, struck with your power through the heart. Then beasts, the wild and tame alike, go romping over the lush pasture land and swim across the river's headlong rush. So eagerly does each pant after you, so do they heed. Caught in the chains of love and follow you wherever you lead. All through the seas and mountains, torrents, leafy roofed abodes of birds and greening meadows, your delicious yearning goads the breast of every creature, and you urge all things you find lustily to get new generations of their kind. Because alone you steer the nature of things upon its course, and nothing can arise without you on light's shining shores, and nothing glad or lovely can be fashioned, I invite you, goddess, stand beside me, be my partner as I write the nature of things. These verses I am striving to set down for Mimius, my friend, your favorite, whom you would crown with every honor and with everlasting accolades. More reason to endow my words with grace that never fades. Meanwhile, Holy One, both on dry land and on the deep, make the mad machinery of war drift off to sleep. For only you can favor mortal men with peace, since Mars, mighty in arms, who oversees the wicked works of wars, conquered by love's everlasting wound, so often lies upon your lap, and gazing upwards, feasts his greedy eyes on love, his mouth agape at you. Famed goddess, as he tips back his shapely neck, his breath hovering at your lips, and as he leans upon your holy body and you reach your arms around him, lady, sweet talk him with honeyed speech, pleading for a quiet peace for Romans. This I ask, for I cannot with easy mind perform my chosen task, nor can the noble scion of the Mimi fail to heed the call to duty when our land is in her hour of need. For Godhead, by its nature, must enjoy eternal life in utmost peace, removed from us and far from mortal strife, apart from any suffering, apart from any danger, powerful in itself, not needing us, and both a stranger to our attempts to win it over and untouched by anger. For what's to come, open your eyes, open your ears, apply keen intellect far from cares, to true philosophy, lest you reject out of hand the gifts that I have assembled for your sake, before you fully grasp them. For now begin to make my discourse on the lofty law of gods in heaven above, and shall reveal the building blocks of all things, the building blocks all things are fashioned of, nature's prime particles, from which she nourishes and grows all things, and into which once more she makes them decompose. We term them in philosophy, according to our needs, matter, atoms, generative bodies, elements and seeds, and first beginnings, since it is from these that all proceeds. Okay, that was book 1, line 1 through 61. I'm going to pick up at line 102. Sooner or later, you will seek to break away from me, won over by doomsayer prophets. They can certainly conjure up for you enough of nightmares to capsize life's order and turn all your fortunes with anxieties. No wonder. For if men saw that there was an end in sight to trials and tribulations, they would find the power to fight against the superstitions and the threats of priests. But now they have no power to resist, no way to reason how, for after death there looms the dread of punishment for the whole of eternity, since we don't know the nature of the soul. Is the soul born? Or does it enter us at our first breath? And does it die with us? And is it broken down at death? Or does it haunt the murk of Orcus and his vasty halls? Does it slither by some magic into other animals? So Aeneas declares, the first among us to bring down from fair Mount Helicon an evergreen and leafy crown, thus making his name famous throughout all of Italy. Yet even so, he sets forth in his deathless poetry that realms of Acheron exist. There really is a hell. And there we neither in the flesh nor in the spirit dwell, but rather something wraith-like of us lingers, wan and weird. It is from these same infernal regions there appeared the shade of never-fading Homer, who, the poet sings, began to shed salt tears and to unfold the nature of things. Therefore, we must consider well celestial happenings, and by what principle the sun and moon run on their courses, and all phenomena upon the earth, and governing forces. And then especially we must nose into, with sharp wits, what makes up the soul and what the nature of it is. What do we mean when we're awake, delirious with fever, that terrifies the mind, or when we're sepulchered in slumber, so that we think we see and hear such persons face to face who have encountered death and whose bones lie in earth's embrace? Nor does it fail me that discoveries, obscure and dark, of Greeks are difficult to shed much light on with the spark of Latin poetry, chiefly since I must coin much new terminology because of our tongue's dearth and due to the novelty of subject matter. And yet to this end, your excellence and my sweet hope to win you as a friend persuade me to tackle any task and take up any toil, and in the still small hours make me burn the midnight oil. As I seek the right words and the right poetry to light brilliant lanterns for your mind, so that at last you might peer deep into the recesses of things once recondite. This dread, these shadows of the mind, must thus be swept away, not by rays of the sun, nor by the brilliant beams of day, but by observing nature and her laws. And this will lay the warp out for us, her first principle, that nothing's brought forth by any supernatural power out of naught. For certainly all men are in the clutches of a dread, beholding many things take place in heaven overhead or here on earth, whose causes they can't fathom. They assigned the explanation for these happenings to power divine. Nothing can be made from nothing. Once we see that so, already we are on the way to what we want to know. What can things be fashioned from? And how is it, without the machinations of the gods, all things can come about? Okay, that was line 102 to line 158. I'm going to pick back up in line 199. Again, why cannot nature make a man so large that he could wade across the deep to other lands, mighty enough to wrench apart great mountains with his hands and outlive generations, unless everything consists of certain matter, and this matter limits what exists? We must therefore confess that nothing can emerge from nothing. But everything created needs a seed from which to cast into the gentle breezes of the air. Another thing, because we seek tilth is more fruitful than untended land and gives back better harvests cultivated by our hand, it's plain that in the ground the elements of things are rife, since turning rich clods with the plow, we stir them into life. If no such elements existed, then you'd see the soil would grow a richer crop all on its own without our toil. Add that nature does not render anything to naught, but she instead reduces everything that she's wrought back to its elemental particles again. Or say that anything in all its parts were subject to decay, then snatched of a sudden from our sight, each thing would pass away, for there would be no need for any force to make a chink between component parts and to unfasten link from link. But since each thing is made of atoms, those seeds that abide forever, until it meets a force that's able to divide it with a blow, or that can enter it where there is void, then nature won't allow it be openly destroyed. Because if age consumes all material outright of everything the lapse of time has taken from our sight, then out of what does Venus bring the creatures, breed by breed, back to the light of life? And what does the crafty earth feed them on and make them grow, each kind according to its need? What feeds the sources of the ocean, both those fountains found below its surface and the rivers flowing over ground? Or the ether the stars graze upon? For all that can decay, devoured by the ages, should by now have passed away. But if in all the span of days gone by, something has stayed, the stuff that makes the universe, with which it is remade, these particles perforce are indestructible. Therefore, nothing can be reduced to nothing, as I said before. Again, one cause would send all things wholesale to their demise if they weren't knit together, loosely or tightly, from the ties of everlasting matter, where the mere tap of a feather would be sufficient to destroy such things not put together from particles of eternal substance. There would be no call for a certain force to fray the bonds of their material. But as it is, since elements are of eternal stuff, linked with bonds of different strengths, unless a strong enough force encounter it, a thing stays safely as it was. Therefore, nothing turns to nothing. All things decompose back to the elemental particles from which they rose. That was line 199 to 249. And now I'm going to shift from that translation to a translation by Rolf Humphreys and read really briefly book 5, lines 416 to 508. Should sound very different. Now I'll describe how the chaotic motes, the turbulent atoms, met somehow to form the basic order of the earth, the sky, the deep, the courses of the sun and moon. Never suppose the atoms had a plan, nor with a wise, intelligence imposed an order on themselves, nor in some pact agreed that what movements each should generate. No, it was all fortuitous. For years, for centuries, for eons, all those motes in infinite variety of ways have always moved since infinite time began, are driven by collisions, are borne on by their own weight. In every kind of way, meet and combine, try every possible, every conceivable pattern, till at length experiment culminates in that array which makes great things begin. The earth, the sky, the ocean, and the race of living creatures. No sun with lavish light was visible then wheeling aloft. No planets, ocean, sky, no earth, no air, no thing like things we know, but a strange kind of turbulence, a swarm of first beginnings, whose discordances confuse their intervals, connections, ways and weights and impacts, motions and collisions. And so the battles raged because these forms were so dissimilar, so various they could not rest in harmony, nor combine in any reciprocal movements. But at last some parts began to learn their separate ways, like elements joined with like, in some such way as to effect disclosure. A visible universe with parts arranged in order, as the earth was sundered from the lofty sky, as ocean spread with its waters kept in proper bounds, as the pure fires of heaven knew their place. At first, no doubt of it, the bodies of earth being heavy and thick matted with each other, met in the middle, took the lowest places, and as they came together and adhered more tightly, they squeezed out those particles which formed the sea, the stars, the sun, the moon, the walls of the world. For every one of these was made of all the elements more smooth and round, much tinier than motes of earth. So ether, wherever there might be openings in the mesh, found its way upward, and its lightness trailed fire as a rose. In just this way we see in morning's ruddy sunlight over lawns jeweled with dew, the veils of mist arising from pool or river, and it seems to us the earth is almost smoking. All this air, ascending frail, thickens aloft, and weaves a canopy of cloud across the sky. So long ago, the light diffusible ether in compact circular denseness curved its way in all directions, spread abroad, and held all other things in its embracing fold. The sun and moon were born and went their rounds between the earth and sky, and neither earth nor sky appropriating ether sphere. They were not heavy enough to sink and settle into the earth, nor light enough to float up to the ether, but their course was set between the two. Between the two they turn, like living bodies, their existence keeping a time, a place, as part of the great world. Their motion and their fixity resemble our own in this respect, that we can move some of our bodily members while the rest remain in quietude. When sun and moon departed, earth sank suddenly, where now the blue-green reach of sea extends. Earth's hollows filled with salt water, and day after day, the more the tidal force of air, the rays of sun beat down on earth with frequent blows, compressing it from width to narrowness, its nature all compact, So much the more by the salt sweat exuded from its body, its ooze increased the sea, the swimming plains. And likewise all the more uncounted motes of heat and air escaped, rose far from earth, crowded the shining reaches of the sky, valleys and plains subsided, mountains loomed to lofty heights, for the crags could not seek down, nor all the parts descend to equal depth. So then the weight of earth solidified, and all the heavy sludge of all the world settled like lees or wine dregs in the cask. Then sea, then air, then all the fiery realm of ether with translucent particles was purified, lightnesses varying from lightnesses, till the most delicate floated, most frail above the highest breath of the least air, above all whirlwind force, unmingling with all turbulence of storm, smoothly the calm direction of its fire gliding along, like to the Pontic Sea, keeping the even tenor of its way. For earth to rest in the middle of that realm we call the universe, its weight must be diminished, little by little, must decrease, must have some other substance underneath joined with it from the start, must have above some other, forming one organic whole. This neither hinders nor depresses air any more than a man's limbs weigh him down, or his head is an overlord to his neck, any more than we feel our whole weight bearing down upon our insoles. Whereas any foreign manner, imposed from without, is a vexatious nuisance, however small its actual heft may be. The difference lies in the innate capacity of things. So earth is not some foreign body, thrust all of a sudden on resentful air, but from the outside of the universe, an integral part thereof, as surely so as our own limbs and organs seem to us. When the earth shudders at some cataclysm, the atmosphere above is also shaken, and that would not ensue unless the earth were somehow fastened and bound to air and sky. They are joined. They cling together by common roots. They've always been so joined and so united. You've seen the like in the way the spirit's essence, frail and invisible, sustains the weight of our bodies, however heavy they may be. They have always been so joined and so united. What else but power of spirit lifts the body of the high jumper up and over the bar? By now you do see, don't you, how a frail nature can be most powerful, conjoined with a substantial body, as the air combined with earth, as our own power of mind joins with our physical natures? Okay, Lucretius, a few lines.